security that works together. When it comes to the security landscape, it's not just one sector that a CISO has to keep his eye on. In fact, it's the life of an octopus, to be literally speaking, because there are so many different domains that a CISO has to keep his fingers in for him to understand and calibrate and work towards his product plan. Welcome to this podcast. My name is Ashwin Raghunath, and today we'll understand the typical day of a Chief Information Security Officer who plays a very important role in today's world in defending organizations from the rising tide of cyber threats. We have Giri Govindarajulu, CISO at Cisco Asia Pacific, who is based out here in Bangalore, and he's been recognized by his team and his peers for success in driving innovation and for gighting the importance of tech's role in securely enabling business solutions. He has 2 patents filed as well, and is a recipient of the CISO 100 Award in 2019. Giri is here with us. Hi Giri, welcome to this podcast.
Hey Ashwin, how are you?
We're doing great, and we are most keen to learn about how do you just go about in managing such a huge landscape and making sure you're always ahead in the game. Tell me a little bit more about your interests and how did you actually come to this place that you are in your career where you are overseeing security of not just Cisco, but all your partner companies and effectively the entire world's security landscape and making contributions there.
Awesome. So I've been with information technology for a long time and been with Cisco for 19 plus years. Primarily driving technology-based solutions, which help either it's a finance or a supply chain. And most recently, I was actually working on the building solutions where you can actually make IoT work. The building management systems, the lighting systems, and how it can be controlled more and drive more efficiency, platinum LEED certifications and stuff like that. So that increased my curiosity in terms of what is possible with technology. But as you know, as much as we have things that are possible with technology, there are also a lot of pitfalls that come because of the technology. And security is one area where there's huge demand in terms of understanding as well as in terms of providing solutions. Are we all safe is a very interesting question that we all get asked. And the answer is no. Does that mean that we should be worried? Probably not. But you should be prepared, right? Companies like Cisco, it's huge. We deal with 47 terabyte of data that passes through our network every day. Is it easy to look into every single byte of the data to see which is good, which is not good? Probably not. Do you know the intent of everyone who is accessing things to be good? Probably not. But there are systems in place, there are architectures in place which actually make our life easier.
How do you plan your day ahead and how do you approach this whole work?
Awesome. So I just don't want to create an impression that we don't sleep, we don't get a life, right? We do have a life. It is like any other job, except that it's different, right? It's not take it easy job. You have to be serious about what is happening. One of the very important things at Cisco that we do as a CISO is we do not consider ourselves as a traffic cop in the traffic analogy. We look at us as an enabler of business. So which means you're not sitting here telling them what people should do and should not do. We are making sure that they are doing what they need to do, but at the same time, they are not messing around things that causes either them, their business, or the company any harm. So my day, in general, as you can imagine, it's not. There's nothing called a typical day. But in general, what I start with is to understand what's happening around when I was sleeping. It starts with intelligence reports, and there are a lot of automation done. So we get alerts in terms of what's working, what's not working, what failed. There are escalations that may be there, may not be there. So that's how my day starts. And once I get a feel of what's happening, then there are 3 things that typically happen on a day. One is we look into things that are happening around us and the solutions that we are putting in place to make sure that we know what's happening, and we call it as a visibility and controls. The second thing we do is we, as a business enabler, have to have a very good relationship with our stakeholders. So we need to build the trust. And then the third thing, which is very unique for me as a CISO of Asia Pac here, is we have a strong team of developers who develop some of the security products. Cisco being a security leader, we have a very unique advantage of taking the intensity of the problems that we have and tell our development team to create solutions. So that would be, I would say, most of my day. Working with the team, working with the stakeholders, working with the engineering teams to develop the products. I also have a second day, which is later in the evening, where I do have meetings, telepresence meetings with my peers and my colleagues based in San Jose and rest of the globe. What if it's not the typical day? There are established processes in place. So even when there is a crisis, you don't see that there's a crisis going on.
Right.
So things are so smooth because once you have a process, once you know what is happening, a lot of them are under control.
I want to pick on one thing where you're talking about. You said keeping Cisco safe.
Yes.
How does the defender defend themselves?
Given the size of the operations, and we also have a huge customer base, including a lot of governments. So we are one of the most liked landscape by the threat actors. So a lot of people want to break on Cisco. They wanted to make a big deal out of it. So we do have quite a bit of threats that happen on a day-to-day basis. As with everything, we have a three-pronged strategy. We deal with people, process, and technology. That's a very standard stuff that you would hear from everyone. But there are certain things that differentiates us in this whole process, right? One, irrespective of whatever we do, people are the weakest link, right? So we have a very structured and robust process, and in terms of making sure that our people understand what it means to keep things safe, what is their responsibility in doing the right things. The second thing we also are looking at within the same people part is we trust our employees more. And a lot of people have a lot of accesses to do their job. But at the same time, if their ID is compromised, the trust is gone, right? It's like, it may be an insider threat, or it can be someone's compromised ID, which can do the same thing. So we do use a lot of behavioral analytics to ensure that as much as I trust you, if I see a behavior which is not the right thing, then, we also need to have the right controls in place. So defining the policies that are relevant and having mechanism to see whatever happens around is compliant with the policy. If it's not compliant, we just have to go and change it. And as with every organization, we do have these policies looked at on a periodic basis. We continue to renew this to reflect what the reality is. And anything and everything we do, right, whether you are putting a control there or whether you are looking into what's happening from a behavior, all these processes are well defined. So if you take from an incident perspective, there are more than 400 playbooks which actually look into what could go wrong, right? So talking about the 47 terabyte of data that comes through, how much cases do you think or incidents do you think are created on a daily basis on an average?
500, 800?
So we are talking about 22 cases on an average, right? Because rest of them are automatically taken care by the technology.
Okay.
And that's where technology plays a role. And I want to be very, very clear here. When we talk about technology, it's not about buying the most expensive product, putting it there and expecting everything to be safe, right? It's more about having the right products, having the right defense in depth, which means, you are making sure at every level you have the right things. So these three really play an important role in terms of keeping Cisco secure.
But it's also important that your peers are as strong as you are, because you are a community where you're sharing information, you're borrowing, playbooks that have already happened so that you're not reinventing the wheel. What is something that you wish your peers in the industry are also cognizant of, which you are strongly at?
Okay, excellent question. And interestingly enough, for us to be successful as a company, we do work with a lot of partners as well, right? Today, if you say we have around 430 different partner sites which talk to Cisco, whether it's a manufacturing, whether it is outsourced, they have to talk to Cisco to make their work happen. And of course, there are a lot of companies which are there in the market, who are doing what they have to do to win the business and things like that. So in my view, there are at least three things. The first one is you have to have an integrated architecture that protects your enterprise. You may have point solutions, but you need to have an integrated architecture which talks to each other, which complements each other in a way that it is able to do self. The second one, which is extremely important, is in terms of bringing visibility. And the saying here is, if you don't know what you have, you can't secure it.
Yeah.
So the first and foremost is for you to know what you know. right? When you talk about enterprises, there are a lot of servers, there are a lot of endpoints, there are a lot of people. They do different things. You need to be in a position to say who is there, what are they doing, are they doing what they're supposed to do, are they doing something different, and you need to be in a position to take action if something is going beyond what you think should not happen. And that's where the behavioral stuff comes into picture. And then the third thing is in terms of using some of these technologies like AML in predicting and driving some of these solutions. Because the rule-based, we used to have solutions which are signature-based. So if I know there is a signature, then I go and look for those things. But that's not going to be sufficient. And even if you take the vulnerabilities, you have tools which can actually look into what vulnerabilities you have. And I can guarantee you there's not a single enterprise in the world which says I have 0 vulnerabilities. So in which case, you may be dealing with maybe hundreds of thousands of vulnerabilities. Which one do you want to fix first? Who tells you that, right? Is this server you need to fix first or something else? And most of the times you are trying to understand the risk posture and trying to figure out what's your priority. So I think those are the 3 things I would like the industry to look at, and a lot of them are making progress in these 3 spaces as well.
I like something you said, Giri, which is essentially that you need to know what you're securing before you're securing. But when it comes to the world of securities and threats, you're entirely in the quadrant of I don't know, because you are walking blind. But you have a sense of intuition that you largely depend on by saying that, okay, this is where I sense something is likely to happen. So what are the trends that you are suspecting which is coming about, and how as a CISO are you preparing a game plan to act?
Okay. I'm going to answer that question into 2 parts. Most of the breaches that has happened in the recent past, okay, are not, you leave the ransomware and things like that, which I'll come to it later, right? A lot of breaches are because of the known things. It's not a no-brainer that, my certain server is not patched, that has a vulnerability. So, 2 parts to the first question itself, right? You need to know what you know, and you need to have the right controls in place so that at least you don't need to deal with the same problem again. Okay. But when you don't know something, then do you trust it or do you wait for it to be trusted? So that is the debate that we always go through, because the moment you wait for it to be trusted, it's too late. In Cisco, we have this 95-5 rule. 95% of the time, something is going to happen and you have the right controls in place and deal with it. 5% you don't even know what to do. That's possible, right? Because the kind of threats that are happening, the motivations are different. The way it lands on us is very different. So now you need to be prepared to deal with it. And that's where some of these newer technologies, the skills of the people that you have and the processes that you have actually helps you handle this in a much better way. And we are way ahead in terms of time to detect, which is one of the key parameters that we use in the incident management, and the time to contain. Because these 2 measures are very, very important. While the industry is talking about hours, hundreds of hours, we talk about 3 hours, 4 hours. Doesn't mean that, we will become 0 hours, but what is really important is the kind of processes we have in place, along with the skill set of the people that we have.
We started talking about how you start your day, right? And since you talked about intelligence reports to prep you through the day. But considering you have, a responsibility which practically doesn't allow you to take your finger off the system, because you're constantly, like you said, there are known knowns and there are unknown knowns and there are known unknowns and there are absolutely unknowns that you're grappling with. How do you wind down, in the sense that how do you finish a day? What are the sets and processes that you put in so that when you start the next day, you've started off where you ended and you're still keeping the momentum going?
Awesome. You certainly made my job look like it's a crazy one.
It isn't.
It isn't. It is like any other job, but of course, you need to look at things very holistically, because anything can go wrong. Yeah. So it's like you're not a security guard watching the gate, right? You are basically looking at the entire house.
At a panel of 200 cameras and.
Well, it's not about cameras, that's a physical security part of it. But the key here is, it is not that crazy as long as you have a process in place. Okay. Because chaos is only going to make it much more worse, right? Because you have to be organized and you need to know where you have your challenges and where you are totally covered. Okay. So from an end of the day perspective, typically most of the times, as I mentioned, the calls with the US folks typically ends around 10ish, 11, depending on the day. And what happens is there are two parts of what I do. One is there is a retrospection of what has happened, what all we need to be doing differently, and how good or how, what are the challenges that we ended that day with. And typically there are things that I jot down on what we should be planning for the next day, because there are, and as I said, right, most of our job is not about running around with what happened yesterday. It's more about strategic planning and putting things in place so that every day doesn't become a crazy day, right? And I don't believe that my days are crazy. It is it's one of those things which I believe in, like, because every time you have a challenge, every time I look at it as an opportunity, right? And I wind my day, most of the days it's very, very quiet and calm. And the best of it, luckily it has not been the case in many days. If there is a problem, I have a 12-hour window of US team taking care of rest of the things when I'm sleeping. So it's not like I have to be awake 24 hours. That's the advantage, that you have a team which is working 12 hours apart. But overall, it is a fun thing to look at. There's a lot of learning. There's never a dull moment. And if you think something is boring, maybe you should take a cybersecurity job.
Thank you so much for your time today, and we look forward to learning more about what you are doing in the CISO role and how you're really pushing the boundaries of what security entails. Thank you so much again.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ashwin.